A single vibration from my phone shattered the brittle calm of that dinner, the screen lighting up with a name that did not belong in the middle of my family's polished cruelty. In that moment, as crystal glasses clinked and forced laughter echoed across the table, I knew something irreversible had begun. The night had started the way it always did in the Hart residence, with marble floors reflecting chandelier light and the murmured arrogance of old money drifting through the air. I walked into the dining room, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, the only clothes that ever truly felt like mine, and the contrast between my simplicity and their curated opulence made Eleanor glance at me as though I were a stain on her perfect tablecloth. The long mahogany table stretched before us, set with gold-trimmed china and silverware polished to a mirror finish. It felt like an altar built to worship their own reflections. I took my seat quietly, already feeling the familiar weight of judgment pressing down as my sister Bianca adjusted her designer bracelet and smiled with smug anticipation. She always sensed when an opportunity approached to remind me of my place. Conversation had barely begun when Eleanor leaned forward, her voice sharp enough to slice through the candlelit warmth as she said, "Lena, we are done rescuing you." She spoke it as if delivering mercy, though her eyes glittered with triumph. Victor nodded slowly beside her, not even bothering to attempt subtlety. His expression was cold, distant, the expression of a man declaring a failed investment a loss. I kept my posture still, my hands loose in my lap as he added, "We're not your bank anymore." Bianca's laugh followed immediately, light and cruel. The sound of someone who had always believed she lived at the top of a hierarchy in which I belonged at the bottom. "She'll never reach my level, Mother," she said, running a fingertip along the rim of her wineglass, as though success were something she alone could bless the world with. Their words should have stung, but after years of hearing them rehearse this same script, the barbs had grown dull. What made this night different was not what they said, but what I knew. I felt the weight of my phone in my pocket, the message that would eventually turn their confidence to panic quietly waiting there. They were so sure of their roles, so certain I stood small beneath them, unaware that the ground beneath their feet was already shifting. As the first appetizers were placed on the table, Eleanor sighed heavily, letting the diamonds at her neck catch the chandelier's glow. She asked, "When will you finally grow up and get a real job?" As though my startup, the vision I had poured years of my life into, were childish graffiti defacing their pristine world. Victor set down his wine glass with deliberate calm, his voice carrying the false authority of a man who had never earned the wealth he lorded over others. "Your sister closes million-dollar deals every month," he said, gesturing toward Bianca, who sat smirking. "That is what success looks like, Lena. Not an app that hasn't earned a cent." Bianca swelled at the praise, flipping her hair as she announced, "7 figures, Lena. You'll never see that chasing your little dream." Her cruelty hovered between us, sharp as the glittering edge of her jewelry. I didn't react, I refused to. I simply watched them, watched their certainty, their entitlement, their belief that my worth could be measured by how much I clung to their approval. They didn't know how badly they were miscalculating. They didn't know who truly held the power in this room. They didn't know the leverage that had been mine for years. And they were about to find out. The room pulsed with their smug certainty, the soft clink of crystal and polished silver layering the air with the illusion of control they believed they possessed. I let their words settle like dust on old furniture, untouched and irrelevant, while my phone hummed quietly against my leg, a small reminder that their entire world already rested in my hands. As Bianca continued her monologue of triumph, describing her latest downtown condo project with the breathless pride of someone who believed money equaled moral superiority, I simply listened. "7 figures, Lena," she said again, letting the phrase hang between us like an ornament she expected me to admire. "You'll never get there with that app." She laughed at her own cruelty, and Eleanor nodded approvingly, folding her napkin with the delicate precision of a woman sculpting her own narrative of superiority. "We've been too easy on you," she said, her tone heavy with theatrical disappointment. "You can't depend on us forever." Victor leaned in with the slow certainty of a patriarch delivering life-altering wisdom, unaware he possessed neither the power nor the clarity he imagined. "It's time you learned to stand on your own," he insisted, his voice calm but hollow. like a judge reading a sentence he believed would teach me humility. His words, meant to wound, slid off me without impact. Their hypocrisy lingered instead. A cold breeze whispering through the room, the house they lived in, the cars they drove. The vacations they boasted about, none of it came from their hard-earned success. They lived on the interest of inherited privilege, cushioned by wealth they protected as though they'd earned it. Dismissing my ambition as childish simply because they could not understand a world that required innovation, Bianca took another sip of wine, amusement brightening her eyes as she leaned forward. "Maybe try real estate," she suggested, dripping with condescension. "Start small. Actually contribute something." She said it with the casual cruelty of someone who had never questioned her own security. But I felt the moment tightening, gathering weight. The dinner was becoming exactly what it needed to be. A stage, and they were unknowingly stepping into the roles they had rehearsed their entire lives. I did not interrupt. I simply waited. When the time came to toast, glasses lifted with the confidence of people convinced they were celebrating their own superiority. My phone vibrated again. I glanced down. The name on the screen froze my breath for just a heartbeat, not from fear but from the quiet certainty of perfect timing. Claudia Warren, Trust Fund Manager. Her message glowed with devastating clarity. Approve monthly allowances for Victor, Eleanor, and Bianca Hart, $20,000 each. I slid the phone back into my pocket, feeling a calm settle through me, as though the entire room had exhaled without realizing it. Their laughter swelled around me, hollow and unearned, while the truth pulsed beneath my skin. Every cent they relied on, every comfort they flaunted, flowed through decisions they believed I was incapable of making. Across the room, I caught Maya Quinn's eye. Her expression was steady, knowing, loyal in a way my family had never been. She moved toward me subtly, leaving a cluster of guests behind, and when she reached my side, she murmured, "They have no clue who's really in control," I whispered back. "They've been living off my choices for years." We shared a brief, quiet moment of understanding before the dramatic shift arrived. The dining room doors opened, and the atmosphere changed instantly. Claudia entered with crisp heels striking marble, carrying a slim leather folder like an executioner's blade. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The illusion of my family's power trembled. Claudia stopped beside our table, her posture elegant, her voice steady as she said, "Miss Hart, I need your authorization for the trust fund disbursements." Silence rippled through the room. And just like that, the first crack appeared in the facade they believed was unbreakable. For a moment, no one breathed. Claudia's presence carried an authority my family did not expect. And when she opened the leather folder to reveal documents marked with the Hart family trust seal, confusion spread across Victor's face like a slow unraveling. He recovered quickly, attempting a scoff that fell flat as he said, "This is absurd. Lena doesn't manage anything." Eleanor's voice followed with brittle disbelief, her fingers gripping her wineglass as though it might anchor her. "There must be a mistake. Claudia, our daughter doesn't control our finances. She can barely manage her own." Bianca crossed her arms, her smirk sharp with certainty as she added, "Is this a joke, Lena? In charge of our money, please." Their laughter returned for a brief, fragile second until Claudia calmly slid a highlighted document toward the center of the table. "Miss Lena Hart," she said in a voice that did not waver, "has been the sole trustee of the $20 million Hart Family Trust since the age of 25. She glanced at me with the quiet acknowledgement of someone who understood exactly what she was unveiling. "She manages all assets, including the estate, the vehicles, and the monthly disbursements of $20,000 each. No funds are released without her consent." Silence fell so heavy it felt like gravity itself had thickened. Victor's complexion drained to a shade I had never seen on him, a pale gray that stripped him of his patriarchal bravado. Eleanor's hand flew to her necklace, fingers trembling as though the pearls themselves might steady her. Bianca's wineglass shook against the table, her earlier arrogance dissolving from her expression one flicker at a time. Claudia closed the folder, gave me a respectful nod, and said, "I will await your decision, Miss Hart." Before her heels clicked away, leaving the wreckage of their illusions behind. I rose slowly, feeling the room tilt toward me, as though drawn by a force they had never imagined I possessed. "For the past 3 years," I said, keeping my voice soft but unyielding, "every cent you've spent has passed through me. Your cars, your vacations, your condo ventures, all of it depended on my approval." Their eyes widened, stunned not only by the truth, but by how little they had seen it coming. "You thought you were in charge," I continued, meeting each of their faces. "But the truth is, I always was." Dessert plates were placed gently in front of us, but no one touched them. My phone vibrated again, and when I glanced down, a new message from Daniel Briggs appeared. "Confirm. Hold on all Hart family allowances." I felt the calm certainty of a decision I had been building toward for years. Stepping away from the table, I pressed my phone to my ear and said, "Put a hold on everything. No disbursements for Victor, Eleanor, or Bianca Hart." Effective immediately, Daniel's reply came without hesitation. "Understood, Miss Hart. Consider it done." When I returned to my seat, Bianca was already panicking. She stared at her phone as though it had betrayed her, tapping furiously before whispering, "My card's declined." She tried again, voice rising. "This can't be right. I used it this morning." Her breathing quickened as another error message flashed across the screen. Victor leaned toward her sharply. "What's going on?" he demanded. But his voice lacked its usual authority. Bianca shoved the phone toward him, her tone climbing to hysteria as she said, "The condo deal, it's collapsing. The funds never cleared." Eleanor clutched her bracelet, her voice thin. "Our accounts are stable. They always have been." She turned to Victor, desperation seeping through her composure. "The house, the taxes, those are fine, right?" It was the first time I had ever heard genuine fear in her voice. Their panic unfurled across the table with a rawness they had never shown me in my entire life. I watched the reality settle in their expressions, slow at first, then all at once a dawning comprehension that the foundations of their carefully manicured world were no longer steady beneath them. Leaning back in my chair, I spoke with a quiet clarity that cut sharper than any raised voice. "The mansion belongs to the trust," I said, letting my gaze rest on each of them in turn. "And I control the trust. Without my authorization, there's no money for taxes, no payments, nothing." Victor's jaw clenched, but his confidence was unraveling, thread by thread. "That's absurd," he muttered. Though even he heard the hollowness of his own denial, Bianca clung to the fragments of her bravado, insisting, "You're bluffing. We have our own deals, our own money." But her shaking hands betrayed her. Eleanor attempted a final veneer of control as she pleaded, "Lena, be reasonable. We have always supported you." But the lie dissolved the moment it touched the air. I didn't soften. "For 3 years, I've signed every check that kept this lifestyle intact," I said. "You have mistaken dependence for power." The truth landed like a blow. Then, as if fate wanted to underline the lesson, Bianca's phone buzzed again. She looked down, and her face drained of every shade of confidence she once possessed. "My biggest client just canceled," she whispered hoarsely. "They said the funds were unreliable, they're pulling out." The devastation in her voice cracked through the last remnants of her arrogance. Victor tried one final feeble attempt at dignity, straightening in his chair as he said, "We don't need your charity. We've done perfectly fine without you." I arched a brow, letting silence expose the lie. He dropped his gaze first. Eleanor's composure broke entirely. Her voice trembled as tears welled in her eyes. "Lena, you can't do this to us." But her words only echoed years of condescension, years of dismissal, years of telling me I was small. I felt no guilt, only the quiet satisfaction of truth returning to its rightful place. The air shifted again, when my phone lit with a new message. At first I expected another alert about frozen accounts, but the subject line was different. A venture capitalist I had pitched to the previous year. I opened it slowly, feeling the temperature of the room shift as my eyes scanned the text. "Concerns about your startup's credibility," I read further, and the words struck like cold iron. "Someone in your family informed us your company is unstable and financially irresponsible." I lifted my gaze to Bianca. She paled instantly, understanding before I spoke. You told investors my startup was a fraud, I said quietly. The entire room fell still. Bianca opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I raised my phone slightly so she could see the email glowing accusingly in my hand. They heard it from you. Her denial was frantic and weak. I didn't mean I was protecting our reputation, she insisted. But Eleanor stepped in, her voice trembling as she added. She was thinking of what was best for all of us. Your project was risky. Sweetheart, Victor nodded stiffly, saying, your sister didn't mean harm. She was keeping our name clean. Their defense of her after she had deliberately tried to destroy everything I had built struck deeper than any insult they had ever thrown my way. The betrayal was laid bare in a way even they couldn't dress up. I stood slowly, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders as I said, you all knew. You knew she lied to investors. You knew she sabotaged my work. And you defended her. The color drained from Bianca's face. Eleanor's hand trembled at her throat. Victor looked away, ashamed but too proud to admit it. And now, I said, my voice steady, I'm done. The word settled through the room like a quiet verdict, final and irrevocable. Done. It echoed in the air, reverberating against the marble floors, the polished silver, the crystal glasses that had once symbolized their effortless security. Now everything felt fragile. I watched Bianca's facade collapse entirely as she whispered, you're destroying me, her voice breaking with each syllable. My clients, my deals, everything is falling apart. Her fingers tightened around her phone, as though holding it tightly enough might undo the unraveling. She had always built her empire on reputation, on whispers of prestige in the right circles. Now those same circles were closing around her like a vice. I felt no sympathy. Eleanor leaned forward, her face pale and glistening with tears she could no longer hide. The perfect socialite mask she had worn for decades had finally cracked, revealing not elegance beneath it but desperation. Lena, please, she said softly, reaching out as if she could pull me back into the position of dependency she preferred. We are your family, you can't just turn your back on us. But I had already lived the consequences of their version of family, years of belittling comments, dismissive glances, withheld approval, and calculated sabotage disguised as guidance. Her plea felt hollow, an echo of affection she had never genuinely offered. I stood straighter, steady in a way I had never been in their presence. Family doesn't destroy each other's dreams, I replied, my voice calm but unyielding. Family doesn't lie to investors or try to ruin what someone built. You did this. Not me. My words didn't rise or sharpen. They simply existed in the space between us. Undeniable. Victor's fauché collapsed next, his voice cracking as he attempted a final appeal. Lena, the mansion. If the funds are cut off, we can't pay the property taxes. They'll seize it. The admission seemed to drain the last of his authority. For decades he had lived like a king, but the reality was stark without the trust. Without me, their empire dissolved into dust. That's no longer my concern, I said quietly. The truth felt clean and simple. Like air after rain. You dismissed me long before I dismissed you. Bianca let out a strangled sound, grief and rage woven together, but no argument left her lips. There was nothing left to defend. I walked toward the doorway with deliberate calm, my footsteps soft against the marble as the mansion seemed to shrink behind me. You thought you could break me, I said, pausing at the frame. But I've been the one holding you up, and now I'm done. The silence that followed was suffocating, a stark contrast to the smug laughter that had filled the house when I arrived. I didn't look back as I stepped out into the hallway. The distant shimmer of Atlanta's skyline, illuminating the glass ahead of me, their voices faded behind me, small and powerless. 6 months later, I stood in my new office overlooking that same skyline, but now it felt like an ally instead of a horizon I had to earn. The space buzzed with energy monitors glowing, keyboards tapping, ideas flying freely. Our logo glowed proudly against the far wall, a symbol not of inherited wealth but of resilience, creativity, and earned success. Maya joined me by the window, her eyes warm with pride as she said, "We did it, Lena. Not them, not their money. Us. I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my chest. The $20 million trust, once a lifeline my family leaned on, had become fuel for innovation, rebuilt through grit rather than entitlement. Word of my family's downfall drifted through mutual acquaintances. Victor and Eleanor now lived in a modest apartment, their former life swallowed by unpaid taxes and vanished luxuries. Bianca worked a desk job at a small management office, her reputation fractured beyond repair. None of it brought me joy. But neither did it bring sorrow. It simply was the consequence of choices they had made long before that disastrous dinner. Power is never where people think it is. It lives in resilience, in persistence, in the courage to keep building when no one believes in you. Never assume someone is powerless. The person you underestimate may be the one holding your future. If this story resonated with you, make sure you like the video. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more cinematic stories. And tell me in the comments about a time you proved someone wrong or a dream you're fighting for now.